The episode begins with Van and Esparta, visibly joyful after defeating the forest dragon without a single casualty. The walls Van built proved their worth. Without them, the outcome would have been dire. Esparta suggests that since the city walls are complete, Van should focus on urban planning, as he needs to build a city capable of housing 10,000 people. To create an attractive destination and draw in new residents, they will need fresh infrastructure. At that moment, Till and Kamson arrive to announce that Bell and Rango have returned with merchants from the Mary trading house who wish to purchase materials from the forest dragon. Van, excited by the prospect, agrees and begins dreaming of a city where everyone can enjoy living. The scene shifts to the Mary trading house merchants examining the dragon's remains. Van wonders how much they will offer, noting the dragon's massive size and the pristine condition of its scales, claws, fangs, and eyes. He estimates the materials are worth at least 100 platinum plates. Recalling that one platinum plate is worth approximately 100 million yen, he is shocked to realize he is sitting on 10 billion yen from a single dragon. When he asks the merchants for their assessment, one praises the quality and urges Van to sell to them, claiming they are the most reputable merchants with royal backing. However, they offer only 60 platinum plates. Van asks to consult Bell and Rango, but the merchants dismiss the brothers as too young and inexperienced. When Bell and Rango hear the price, they immediately reject it, citing the high quality of the materials. One of the merchants pulls them aside, ordering them to stay silent and follow along since they are part of the Mary trading house. He threatens that no other merchants will visit this remote village for a year, leaving Van with no choice but to accept the 60 plates. However, the brothers refuse to compromise their integrity as merchants. Van overhears the exchange. While he understands the value of a platinum plate, he realizes the merchants are trying to swindle him. Bell and Rango argue that fair dealings lead to greater long-term profits, especially with someone like Lord Van. Furious, the merchants warn that the president will fire them if they continue this behavior, and they storm off. Van asks the brothers if they are truly prepared to be fired. When they confirm they are, Van suggests they start their own trading company. The brothers are stunned, explaining that starting a company requires 3 difficult conditions: paying the Merchant Guild registration fee, owning a physical shop, and obtaining a recommendation from a titled noble. Van notes that the first 2 are easy, but the third is a hurdle. He realizes the only titled noble who might help is Panamera. He rushes to her, explaining the situation and the fact that the Mary trading house is backed by the royal family. Panamera muses that since she is a newly minted noble, recognizing a small startup company won't hurt her. In fact, it would look bad for the royals to suppress it. As a noble without land or knights, she needs to build a reputation through bold moves, and supporting honest merchants is a perfect opportunity. Van asks why she doesn't just take credit for killing the dragon herself to boost her standing. Panamera points out the flaws in his logic. Dragons are rarely killed, and an investigation would eventually lead back to him. Van despairs, fearing his family will summon him back if they discover his power. Panamera suggests a solution. He must earn his own title. While he is the son of a marquis, he could start as a baron to establish his own house. By revealing his achievement of killing a dragon before the age of 8, he can secure a title and independence. Van is shocked, but Panamera understands his hesitation. She recalls how her own title brought enemies and exploiters, whom she turned to ash. She advises Van not to hesitate to use his catapults on any new enemies, as a pile of corpses is a great deterrent. She assures him she will handle her own promotion while supporting his claim to the dragon-slaying glory. Van returns to Bell and Rango to share the good news. Lady Panamera has agreed to back their new company. Overjoyed, the brothers offer to buy the dragon materials for 130 platinum plates to kickstart their business. Van happily agrees. They decide to head to the royal capital to sell the goods, but realize they lack a carriage, as the Mary trading house merchants took the only one. Van decides to build them a new carriage on the spot and suggests using Panamera's warhorse to pull it, noting its exceptional stamina and speed. Meanwhile, the Mary trading house merchants are driving away, laughing and convinced that Bell and Rango will soon come crawling back in tears. Suddenly, a carriage blazes past them at incredible speed. It is driven by Panamera carrying Bell and Rango, The merchants are horrified to see the brothers accompanied by a viscountess, realizing their company is now a reality. In the royal capital, Scaria, Panamera meets with the king. Instead of asking for a promotion for herself, she requests a title for Van. The king is surprised, as he hasn't met the man she's praising. She explains that Van is the governor of a remote village and cannot leave his post, but his achievements are peerless. When the king asks for details about this production magic user, who isn't an elemental mage, Panamera reveals he is the son of Marquis Vertillo and only 8 years old. She recounts how Van saved the village from bandits, built fortified walls and moats, and successfully killed a forest dragon. She clarifies that while she assisted, Van and his followers delivered the killing blow without casualties. To prove it, she presents a dragon fang and invites the king to see the transformed village. Impressed, the king grants Van the title of Baron. The news shocks the kingdom, as he is just a child. Back at the village, Van has been busy during Panamera's absence. He has redesigned the houses to be more elegant and rebuilt the village center. He also constructed 2 massive towers, named Oligo and Grape Tower, which serve as landmarks and watchtowers to enhance defense. The villagers now live in peace. Van invites his friends to dine at the top of one of the towers. Everyone is happy, and the view is breathtaking. They remark that the settlement truly feels like a city now. They suggest naming the city after him, but Van modestly refuses. He asks Arte for her opinion, and she shyly tells him to do as he wishes. To conclude the meal, Till brings out a cake. Van is stunned, wondering how she made it. She explains that since Belle and Rango opened their shop, she can now source all the necessary ingredients. Van looks out over the horizon, feeling immense pride in the village he has built. After Bill and Rango opened their shop in the village, Till brought out a cake. She had managed to gather all the necessary ingredients to bake it. Van remarked that the village seemed to be transforming into a beautiful place. Everyone was amazed by the cake's delicious taste. Van asked Till why she wasn't eating, and she explained that she had been so immersed in baking lately that she'd been eating cake every day, and her weight had reached a worrying state. Van then noticed Campson staring off into the distance and asked what was wrong. Campson replied that there was a group of people approaching who didn't look like soldiers or adventurers. The scene shifts to this group standing before Van. One of them asked, "Is this Siatho village?" Esparta explained that he had heard a people called the Siatho lived on this land before the village was built, which is why it bears that name. Van was surprised to learn the village had a name all along. One of the newcomers remarked that the place had changed so much he could hardly believe it. When Van asked why they had come, one of the men explained that they were from a neighboring village. They were burdened by heavy taxes and lacked enough young people to work, leaving them barely able to survive. They had come to discuss the matter with the people of Siatho. Van asked why they lacked young men, and the man replied that their youth hadn't chosen to leave. They were taken by the Count to bolster his forces in preparation for war. Van realized they were from a village in the Ferdinato district, and knew he shouldn't technically receive people from another territory, but they had risked their lives to get there. Van asked them, "How would you feel about moving here?" One man asked if he really meant he would take them in, noting they had no money. Van assured them it wouldn't be a problem and that he would exempt them from taxes for a while. He added that they had plenty of food and he could prepare houses for them. When Van asked about their population, the man said only 10 of them had come today, but the village had about 300 residents. Van asked if one house per family would suit them and told them he would send adventurers to help escort the entire village back. The man was astonished, asking if they could truly accept such kindness. Van also offered to lend them wagons for their belongings, but the man said it wasn't necessary, as they had cows that could carry everything. Van asked in surprise, "Do you have dairy cows?" The man confirmed that their district had fertile pastures, so they had 10 cows. Van realized that with cows they could produce milk, cheese, and butter, a new industry for the village. The scene moves to the villagers migrating to Van's village. Ortho remarked that Lord Van was welcoming 300 people just like that, and noted that the reward for this mission was very generous. Pluriel told them they were almost there and to keep a close watch on their surroundings, reminding them that the last time they got distracted chatting, a forest dragon attacked. Ortho asked one of the villagers if she was all right, and she said she was, though she admitted she had been against the move because they were relocating from a remote place to an even more isolated one. The scene transitions to the villagers arriving at Seatho. Van welcomed them, and seeing they were exhausted from the journey, offered them all the grilled meat they could eat before they rested in the houses he had prepared. He instructed Till to lead them to the food. Van thought to himself that preparing houses and a barbecue for 300 people was hard work, but well worth the effort. One of the villagers asked Van if there was any work they could do, as they wanted a way to earn a living. Van asked if he could rely on them to manage the new inns or shops they were opening, and mentioned he also needed help tilling new fields. One man said they could handle the fields, but they had no experience in trade. And that is how the anime episode ends. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell icon to receive all our latest updates.